Morning. So we're up to Tov Yoteh. So we're going to do a few short simonim today, 3 short simonim. The first one is literally a few words. Mitzvah laharbos besudas Rosh Chodesh. There is a mitzvah to be marbe Seuda on Rosh Chodesh. So says the Mishnah. By the way, who does this apply to? So if you look at footnote 1, he says Din zel laharbos besuda kosev kaf Chaim b'shem the Yavitz shenem gam lenoshim she'alein laharbos besuda Rosh Chodesh kanoshim. The women and men should be Marbe Seuda on Rosh Chodesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Aleph. There's no chiyuv Seuda. You don't have to wash and have a proper Seuda like you do on Shabbos or Yom Tov. You can get by with other things. So you want to buy a nice something, particular item of food or whatever it may be. That would be appropriate. But you haven't got a chiyuv Seuda. But if you do, you wash and you have a Seuda l'kavod Rosh Chodesh, then harizeh meshubach, that is praiseworthy. Mitzvah, yeah. So look at this. Look at footnote 2. Umitam zeh nohag agon b'Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, the disciple, lishtes b'chol Rosh Chodesh k'tzas yayin, v'gam noson livnei beise lishtes af lenoshim, and he would give all his family and the women as well to have a little bit of wine. V'omesh shetzrichim lekabedes yom Rosh Chodesh v'alidei shtias hayayin marim shu Yom Tov. So by giving them all l'chaim, a bit of wine, then that's what he would do on Rosh Chodesh. Okay, so that's what it means. Mitzvah laharbos besuda Rosh Chodesh. There's no chiyuv Seuda, but it's certainly harizeh meshubach, says the Mishnah Berurah, for someone who does wash and makes a Seuda on Rosh Chodesh. V'kosach poskim, and therefore it should be marbe something. Okay. V'chosva poskim. Continuing the Mishnah Berurah, we're in Tov Yoteh. We're halfway through Sif Cotton Aleph. V'kosva poskim b'shem midrash psikta. Kol mezonosav shel adam katzuvnei meRosh Hashanah ad Rosh Hashanah. Famous Gemara, comes in Beitza and other places, that a person's income for the year is set from Rosh Hashanah ad Rosh Hashanah, chutz mima shemoitzi b'Shabbosos v'Yom Tovim v'Rosh Chodoshim. Now, amazing. Now we know from the Gemara in Beitza, it says chutz m'Shabbosos v'Yom Tovim, but here we've got the nusach is and Rosh Chodesh v'chol hamoed u'ma shetzinoikos malichin l'beis Rabban, school fees, what you pay the Rebbes. Now, in Moisifin Lay, and if you therefore increase your expenditure for these things, Moisifin Lay, they will be added to your cheshbon, and you'll get more income that year. And if you cut down on it, then your income will be lower, or you'll get the parking ticket, or whatever it is. Because of Abbas Yosef, the when it says what your kids bring, it's an interesting nusach, right? What do you mean, mashetinokus malichin? It should be, schar limud or something. So koi al schar limud is going on the schar limud. V'habach pirush to koi al Rosh Chodesh. V'akavona al masha onu noagim lishleach al yedei hatinokus moish Rosh Chodesh l'Rabban. Ve'ein levat l'amilag ad kan. So what does it mean, malichin, the mashetinokus malichin? Either it means the schar limud, the Rebbe, the school fees, or it means that they had the minhag, they would give some money, some moish or Rosh Chodesh to the Rabbi. Nowadays the minhag is you put it in the shlachmanos or maybe Chanukah time, but here apparently there was a minhag to give money to the Rebbe on Rosh Chodesh. Ve'ein levatan ha-minhag. Okay, if you look at footnote 3, it's very interesting. He says Divrei Medrash. Now he's quoting the Mechaber. The Mishnah Berurah is quoting a Medrash. Now I told you it's Gemara in Beitza, but he says there's a difference between the nusach. Divrei Medrash Elu Hevi Le'el in Siman Reishim and Beis. That's in the beginning of Hilchos Shabbos. B'Shem HaGemara BeBeitza on Daf Tez Zayin Amud Aleph in the beginning of the second parak. Shema shenemar shekol mezonosav shel adam katzuvnei meRosh Hashanah chutz me'asor Shabbos v'Yom Tov v'yitzos bonos Talmud Torah v'lo yizkir HaGemara klal es yitzos Rosh Chodesh. So there the Gemara talks about Shabbos expenditure and school fees, yeshiva fees, but it doesn't mention Rosh Chodesh. Ochein hadarke Moshe kosav, that's from Moshe Feinstein. She'ozorua hoisif b'shem haYerushalmi shegam hitzos Rosh Chodesh bichlal zeh. That he's quoting the Arzarua who cites the Yerushalmi that says Rosh Chodesh expenditures are included. Ubir Abbas Yosef shema shelo huskru b'Gemara it says Rosh Chodesh. Why doesn't the Gemara mention it? The answer is mishum she. It's included in Yom Tov. And therefore, when the Gemara mentions Shabbos Yontif and it says in the bottom of the Talmud Torah, Yontif would include Rosh Chodesh. Amazing. Okay. Sif Cotton base. So we said here in this very short simon, mitzvahs laharpas besudas Rosh Chodesh. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Cotton base, nire the mashemarbe besuda b'yom lekavod Rosh Chodesh dai. That you don't have to do it in the evening and in the day. If you have something nice for Rosh Chodesh lunch, breakfast or whatever, that would be sufficient. Ve'in tzarich laharbis gam b'layla. You don't need to increase at night time as well. He says in footnote 4 in the beginning there, if you do have something at night time, let's say it's Rosh Chodesh is when next Tuesday night, Wednesday, right? So if you were to have something late on Tuesday night, according to Rashi, you're not being Mekayim the Seudas Rosh Chodesh, and so to the Nimukei Orach Chaim, b'shem of Darkei Tshuva. However, the Magen Avraham Kosov sheyotza b'zeit chayva. If you just have at night, you are yotzi chayva. Okay, continuing the Mishnah Berurah. Kosvu ha'achronim z'hamadagtekim nagim k'shechol Rosh Chodesh b'chol oisem Michael echod yosim b'chol hayom l'kavod Rosh Chodesh. When Rosh Chodesh falls on a weekday, those who are medagdek would increase one item of food. You know, you buy yourself something special, whatever it may be. And if it falls, Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, you increase one item that you wouldn't normally have at your Shabbos Seuda. So that it's recognizable for Rosh Chodesh. A lot of people have an ice cream or whatever it is, something you wouldn't normally have during the week, and on Shabbos to add something. If you look at the Magen Avraham, he'll talk at length about the halachas of Berachas Hamazon Rosh Chodesh. Mishnah Berurah. I dealt with it back in Berachas Hamazon, says in the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah and I'll also mention it coming up in a few simanim. Okay, that is the end of Tov Yud Tes. Tov Chof. Im hanoshim rishoyis lekoinin b'Rosh Chodesh. So Rachman al-Islan, if there's a levaya on Rosh Chodesh, so the practice in the days of old used to be that women would be ma'anos, they would wail. That's part of the avelus of a levaya. They still do it, yes, Faradim? Yeah. Al hameis noshim ma'anos. The women will wail on a mace. Shekulan omris ke'echod. Now that means there are different types of mourning. We'll see in a second. But they would do that. This ma'anos means they would all wail together. Or matapchis, dahainu lahakos kaf al kaf, and they would also sort of clap their hands together as a sign of mourning. Avaloi makoinanos. This is a third type. What is that? Shetei ahachas omeres v'acheres ones achareo. Where one woman sort of leads the chanting and the wailing, and others respond to that. But once the kvura has taken place, they don't do any of that. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotzen Aleph, Hesped. Interesting, it's called the Hesped. So the actual wailing, that is the Ikka Hesped. It's not what we call a Hesped, where someone stands up and says things about the mace. But the Ikka Hesped is the Noshim is Mekoidenos. The also Rosh Chodesh, and that type of responsive wailing is not allowed on Rosh Chodesh. Shehukum b'Yontav, because it's like a Yontav. V'ayim b'Yerodeh Siman Tofal of Sif Hey v'Chol Zeh be'Enish Da'alma. That's for a regular person who passed away. But a Talmid Chacham Mekoidenos Kedarkem b'Chol. But a Talmid Chacham who passes away, you are allowed to on Rosh Chodesh like you would b'Chol. Now, if you look at the footnote number 1 at the beginning there, he says, "L'arach b'Rosh Chodesh." V'la'arach b'Rosh Chodesh atzeres hisoirus v'chadei ma'al nifta. What about you're not having a levaya, but let's say someone passed away, and you want to have a gathering like of Hespedim and things like that. Are you allowed to do it on Rosh Chodesh? So al nifta. So here Agan of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach she'asa she'ubichlal Hesped, because that's included in Hesped. You're calling it a hisoirus gathering or whatever you want to call it, but it's really a hesped. So if you're listening in the car, there's no music in the 3 weeks, and you on Rosh Chodesh Av, you want to listen to Hespedim said about people of that. That's okay. That's not the same. And that would be allowed. But to arrange Natzeres Hisorus on Rosh Chodesh, Rosh Zalman says not. Okay, let's carry on. Seif base. We're up to Tov Chaf Seif base. Omrim tziduk hadin v'kadish. So when it falls, if Rachmana Litzlan there's a mace on Rosh Chodesh, you can say the tziduk hadin and kaddish. Says the Ramah, ve'ein noagin came, but our minhag is not to. Avanya biyardeh siman tafalef sivav bahagah. V'chein b'chol hayom she'ein omrim bohem tachanun. And so too, any days when we don't say tachanun, we wouldn't do tziduk hadin. V'chein be'erev Shabbos achachatzois. Yesh omrim she'im kovrim meis b'layla she'ein omrim kaddish v'lo tziduk hadin. So that is true as well on Erev Shabbos after Chatzos. We know also not to give Hespedim and also no Tziduk Hadin. And if we are Kover and Meis Belayla, also no Kaddish or Tziduk Hadin. Says the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Base, Omrim Tziduk Hadin. So the Mechaber says you do on Rosh Chodesh. She'ena Hesped Ela Hodah v'Kabbalah Din Shemaim. There's a Hesped and there's Tziduk Hadin. Hesped is a Hesped and Tziduk Hadin.
What is this Kaddish?
I assume it means the special Kaddish you said, the oval says at the end. I assume. She'ena Hesped she'ela hodah v'kabbalah zedin. So the Mechaber says you do say tziduk hadin on Yom Tov, or on Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because it's not the same as a Hesped. It's just hodah, and you'll be mekabel din shemaim. But the Ramah says our minhag is not to. The Ashkenazim says in the Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Gimel shemargil lehesped, because once you start doing tziduk hadin, that will encourage a person to give a hesped, which you shouldn't do on Rosh Chodesh. V'kos v'achronim she'afilu lechacham b'fonov ein enagim b'Rosh Chodesh lo tziduk hadin shehu tchina. That even when Rosh Chodesh, even when the chacham is b'fonov, there's a high level of chiyuv hesped. Even when the chacham is b'fonov, let's say they bring the mace into the shul or whatever it is, ein noagim b'Rosh Chodesh lo tziduk hadin. We don't say tziduk hadin Rosh Chodesh. Shehu tchina, that's a form of tefillah. Ela darshan alav imu bar hachi. We can make a hesped. We can be derish if he is that. V'emrim kaddish achad drosha, and then we say kaddish after the drosha. If you look up for note 2, this is going on the Shatzian, but he says other times as well. V'chein inyan Purim. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Rav Moshe Feinstein's Levaya was in Yerushalayim on Purim, and he died. I think Tanis Esther, they flew the mace, or he died. I think the Tanis Esther in Chustaretz in America. I can't remember exactly, but he went to Eretz Yisrael, the mace, and they had a massive hesped in Eretz Yisrael. V'aminu b'zeh kosva geshe Chaim shesfardim maspidim. Talmid Chacham b'fanav Rosh Chodesh, ach ein laharich b'dvar. The minhag says the Gesher Chaim that you do a hesped for a Talmid Chacham, but you're not marich. V'hayisiv sham she'af lahesped eishes chover b'faneh b'dvarim katzorim mekinim Rosh Chodesh. Even the wife of a Talmid Chacham, an eishes chover, also you do it a slightly shorter hesped, mishum she'eishes din Talmid Chacham b'fanav, because that's got the same status as a Talmid Chacham b'fanav. Okay, v'chein be'erev Shabbos achachatzois sif kotzen daled. Shegam kein ein omrim tachanun. Also, that's a time when you don't say tachanun. We don't say tachanun at mincha and erev Shabbos. V'adin be'erev Yom Tov lochein ein omrim tziduk hadin. Therefore, we don't say tziduk hadin. If you look at footnote number 6, what about making the bracha? If a person goes to the Beis HaKvaros, we normally make a bracha v'asher yotza eschem badin. You see it written as you go into the Beis HaKvaros. So, what about making that bracha on Rosh Chodesh and other times on Erev Shabbos? So he says then in the second paragraph in footnote 6, Levarich birchas asher yotz eschem badin hanemeres bechnis lebeis hakvaros biyomim she'ein omrim b'hem tziduk hadin kosva stei chemet ubeshal shuvas Yehuda Yale. You got to jump to the back here. Here that shvadas Torah. You're allowed to make it even though you can't do tziduk hadin. Mishum shein zeh tziduk hadin ala birchas hashevach. Making this bracha is actually a birchas hashevach. V'chein hoyre hachazon ish omnam b'sefer Orach Rabbeinu huva she'agon Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky the disciple shalis hachazon ish mivarich bracha zu b'tisha b'av. Very interesting. And the minhag is many people go. I myself go most years on Tisha B'av. So do you make the bracha of asher yotza eschem hadin? So according to the above, you do. According to the above, you do. However, the stipler asked the Chazon Ish, "V'loy onuloi," and he didn't answer him. Achdas Hagon Reb Chaim Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky Shamavarech lo hifsid. You can, and therefore you don't lose out by making the bracha. Mikol Mokum bikesh me'acher shebirch v'yitziyosei. But the stipler himself, he got somebody else. He might see him who was with him. But the practice seems to be that you can, and certainly according to the aforementioned poskim. Okay, back to the Mishnah Berurah. V'ayin oid prati dinim b'zeh b'yerdeh simen tov aleph sif vav v'achronim sham kosvataz the mutter lo matziduk adin al adam gadol shemeis afilu b'yomim she'ein orim bohem tachanan. That you can do tziduk adin for an adam gadol who died, even on the days when you wouldn't say tachanan. Kamoy lag ba'omer, tu ba'av, v'shvat v'chadomer, te'enam moed. Avalo b'rosh chodesh Chanukah u'Purim, te'elu niskru b'Talmud. Because these days are actually mentioned in the Talmud, and therefore you shouldn't do tziduk adin on them. Belayla, but you can do it tziduk adin and kaddish. I remember one time hearing a drasha from a Reisman, and he said something very powerful. He said, we've been there. Sometimes there's a Levi on a day where you shouldn't say Hesped because it's whatever, like Boimer or Erev Shabbos or Chol Hamoed or things like that. And many times you hear someone stand up and says you shouldn't say Hesped, but, and essentially, Divrei Preda, whatever it is, but Lamaisa, it turns into some form of Hesped. So Reisman said that sometimes a person needs a certain tikkun, and it could be that this person, his tikkun is that he's not going to have a hesped, and therefore to give the hesped is actually very detrimental for that neshama, for the mace, because his tikkun is to die on a day where you're not going to have a hesped, and then somebody comes up and gives a hesped. I was actually one time, it was a very tragic situation that I had to give a hesped on Chol Hamoed, and I said to the Rav beforehand, I said, and I was aware of this Reisman thing, and I said to him, are you absolutely sure? Because really the halach is nishlazay, you shouldn't do it. And he just told me that for an adam choshev, an adam kosher, you should, and okay, so I said something short and divrei Torah and whatever. But anyway, that's just something to bear in mind. Okay, let's just do it. The next one is tiny. Tov chof aleph. Kriyas uvroshi chodshechem koidim pesukei de zimra. So nagin ba'Ashkenaz she'omrim parsha Rosh Chodshechem shachris acha parshas hatomid. We know that there's parshas hatomid we say every morning as in the Karbonos, but on Rosh Chodesh you should also say of that paragraph of Rosh Chodshechem. So if you look in your Art Scroll Seuda, you will find it there. On Rosh Chodesh say the following. But interesting nagin ba'Ashkenaz to say that. Of a Sfard ein nagin la'omra. You don't. The minhag is not to say it. If you shall see the nikru so b'sefer Torah, because you're going to get there soon. Just hang on a bit, and you'll say. Yeah, so I say it every Shabbos. Yeah, so on Shabbos morning I also. Yeah, I don't know if maybe he says it elsewhere. I don't know. So the Mishnah Berurah just says a few words. Why taka? Why should we do it? Says the Mishnah Berurah because they farsim Rosh Chodesh. So just publicizing the fact that it's Rosh Chodesh. So we said, Ashkenaz said in Pesukei de Zimra, and Sfar don't, because anyway you're going to do it in Kriyas HaTorah.
How can you say before you say the Musaf before you start Shabbos?
Yeah, true. Okay, we say that, we'll leave it there.